2011 through present day Dodge Durango with the 3.6 liter Pentastar engine, serpentine belt, and thermostat replacement. I'm Brian Esser from How To Automotive. I'm going to take you step by step through the process of changing out those two parts. So you're going to need a bucket or something to catch coolant when we take the thermostat off. Here at the shop, we like to use cement mixing buckets that you can get at Home Depot. We just slide it underneath the vehicle. It does a good job of catching most of the coolant when you take things apart. I'll link it up in the description of the video. Next, you need to pop off the top engine cover. It's just held on with some rubber grommets, so you're just going to lift straight up like this and set aside. Now we're going to remove the air cleaner assembly here. I'm using an 8mm socket with a little impact tool to loosen up the clamps. The side with the throttle body is slightly tucked underneath the cowling, so I just used a ratchet. So once you get the clamps loosened up, there's going to be an air intake temp sensor right here at the back. We need to squeeze the tab and unplug. Now what we can do is just going to pull the air cleaner assembly off the box here, and then lift up and then pull out towards you, and then you can set this assembly aside. Now with a pair of hose clamp pliers or regular pliers here, we're going to squeeze the squeeze tab on the upper radiator hose, slide it back, and we're going to pull this upper radiator hose off. We want to make sure that the engine has cooled down and there's no pressure on the upper radiator hose when you take this off so you don't get sprayed. So now with a large pick tool, I like to slide it underneath the hose and the filler neck here, so that way it breaks the bond free and it's easy to slide the hose off. So once the hose comes off, we're just going to let it drain down onto that bucket down there, and there's this little shield below, but that's okay. We're going to wash this off here in a minute. So we're going to drain a little bit out, and then after that we're going to tuck the hose off to the side like this. Now with a 10mm socket, we're going to remove the two bolts. I'm using a little impact tool here made by Milwaukee Tools. I'll link this up in the description, but if you don't have something like this, just a regular ratchet and an extension will work fine. Go ahead and remove the two bolts, and then you can pull the thermostat housing off like this. Also, the gasket may be stuck on the face here, so go ahead and remove that. After that, we're going to wipe the surface down and get it nice and clean. I'm going to be installing a factory replacement thermostat. I wanted to share with you the part numbers. I will link it up in the description of the video, so look for it there in case you need it. The new thermostat comes with the O-ring already built into it, so you don't need to order anything separate. Just go ahead and install it. So we're going to put it in position, and we're going to start the two 10mm bolts by hand. Now I'm going to run the bolts in until they're snug. I'm not torquing them down with the impact tool here. I'm just running them in until it touches. After that, we'll switch over to a torque wrench and torque them down to spec. So the torque spec is 12 Newton meters, which translates to about 9 foot-pounds or 106 inch-pounds, whichever measurement you're comfortable with. So we're going to torque it down until you hear it click. Now you can go ahead and reinstall the radiator hose and slip the clamp back on. When reusing these type of clamps, I like to kind of feel how much tension it has. So if it feels like it's weak, then I recommend replacing. But if it feels like it's super strong, go ahead and reuse it. So on the second half of this video, we're going to change out the serpentine belt. If you're not doing that, I recommend you wash everything down with some fresh water. Just rinse off all that coolant that drained on there. There's also that shields below, just rinse it off. But we're going to change the serpentine belt out. So what we're going to do is with a little extension and a ratchet, we're going to torque the tensioner over counterclockwise like this, and then we can slip the belt off. The tensioner is on the passenger side of the cylinder head. So go ahead and remove the serpentine belt. So we're going to replace this belt with a quality Gates replacement belt. I will link it up in the description of the video. So I printed out a diagram of how the belt routes. So we're going to follow the belt routing, and we're going to install the new belt. I also recommend that you check the old belt with the new belt, make sure everything is the same, make sure it's the same length and same amount of ribs and everything on it. Once you're satisfied that they're the matching belt, now we can go ahead and route this around the crank pulley, and then around the water pump and an AC, and then just keep routing it around according to the diagram. So I routed around all the pulleys except for the alternator pulley. The alternator is the last one I'll slip on, so I'll torque the tensioner over to the left, and I'll slip the belt on. Now I'm just going to make sure that everything's in the groove and make sure everything is lined up. Just take your time and make sure everything is the way you like it. So now we're going to prep it for putting coolant in. Right here on the top of the thermostat is a bleeder screw, so we're going to back this out a few threads right here with a flat blade screwdriver. Now we can fill the radiator up with Mopar 50/50 mixed approved coolant. So now at the bleeder screw on the top of the thermostat, we're going to make sure that's loose, and you'll see the coolant run out. As the coolant pours out, then we know the air has bled out of it. Now we can reinstall it back in. So we'll run it in until it's snug. So I'm using my screwdriver here, and I'm just snugging it up. And now we're going to rinse everything off right here because the coolant drained onto the belt a little bit. So we're going to rinse everything off. So now we can go ahead and reinstall the air cleaner assembly. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the end with the throttle body on first, and then we're going to plug in the air temp sensor in the back, and then there's a little grommet in the middle that the middle portion of the air cleaner mounts onto, so you just press it in there, and then we'll mount the air box portion of it next, and then we'll tighten up all the clamps. Now we can go ahead and start the engine, and we're going to finish bleeding out the cooling system here. So what we're going to do is let it run for about 10 or 15 minutes. At the same time, we want to turn the heater on the vehicle. So we want it on the hottest settings on the both passenger side and the driver side of the dash here. So set those to the hottest settings, and then what we're going to do is we're going to set the fan on the lowest settings. So it's going to just be barely blowing out of the dash, but it's on the hottest settings, and that'll make sure that the coolant, there's no air bubbles in the cooling system as far as the heater system in the dash. So we're going to run it for about 10 or 15 minutes. We want to feel the heat coming out of the dash. We also want to feel the thermostat open up, and also we want to make sure that the cooling fans run. So this engine may run 10 or 15 minutes before that cooling fan comes on. The thermostat here, if you give it a little squeeze on the upper hose here, if you feel that it's nice and hot, then you know the thermostat has opened up. The coolant level may drop down. You may have to top that off. At this point, you're ready to cap the radiator off, put the radiator cap back on, and then we're going to go ahead and put the top engine cover back on. The top engine cover is just mounted on with some rubber grommets, so you'll just line them up and press the cover down until it locks into place. I will link up all the parts and tools that I use in the description. I'm Brian Eslick from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Encourage you to subscribe. Invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again for watching.